there, fellow Patriots. Welcome back to another episode here on Patriots of the American Republic. Just a few days ago, another hit to our republic was executed by the Democrats due to their relentless hatred for Donald Trump. Since Trump announced his candidacy, the Democrats went into immediate dirty politics by calling him a racist, misogynist, Islamophobe, xenophobe, etc., right? Dirty politics is dirty politics. However, they managed to go into a different category. They managed to spy on a presidential candidate, funded and created a fake dossier, which then prompted an illegitimate investigation to try and take down a sitting president. They created more hoaxes in order to impeach and attempt to remove a duly elected president, numerous irregularities during the prior election that led to a very doubtful result, create a false insurrection narrative, raided his home last year, and the FBI staged evidence to make Trump look guilty. They manipulated the law in order to take him to court, and then further manipulated the judicial system in order to attempt to put him in jail and remove him from the ballot box, which many states have tried to do unjustly. The level of abuse that has been displayed over the last decade are things that we read about in dictatorship type countries. I mean, if you look at what Nicolas Maduro has done to remain in power in Venezuela and compare it to what Democrats are doing now, one cannot help but to see the similarities between the two. So the first topic that I want to touch on in this current segment is the judicial abuse. You know, as mentioned in our opening monologue, the left has essentially politicized law enforcement, intelligence agency, and now our judicial process. Many will blame Biden for this, but this type of practice honestly started before this current administration. If you recall, Obama used the IRS to target conservatives and journalists that would challenge his authority. There were lots of things that the Biden administration has done that's very, very similar to what Obama did during his administration. You know, one of the concerns that Donald Trump ran on was draining the swamp. It was part of his campaign. He tried his best to root out government corruption. Unfortunately, I don't think he really realized how deep that swamp went or how infiltrated that swamp was, because, I mean, there was unfortunately many swamp creatures within his own administration. You know, almost immediately after winning the 2016 election, the Democrats quickly moved to begin their plan at undermining Trump and attempting to remove him from power by any means necessary. Now, keep in mind, as I've stated before, the illusion of democracy is not democracy. And I know that we live in a republic, but any illusion is not the reality, right? It's a facade. So the Democrats have to maintain this illusion that we, the people, are still in charge, but we really aren't. If they're allowed to twist and manipulate the law and situations to favor themselves. I mean, when you look at the facts, when you look at the fact that during Trump's administration, not one single Democrat was investigated, not one single Democrat was taken to court, not one single Democrat was jailed for any abuse or corruption whatsoever, and there were multiple people on the Trump side that were investigated, that were harassed. You got Michael Flynn, you got Roger Stone, you know, you've got Trump himself. So even while we're under Republican type of governance, if you will, the Democrats seem to have a relentless amount of power that allows them to continue to go after and harass. And I mean, look what they did with Michael Flynn. They essentially bankrupt him and got him to remove himself from the administration. What they did with Jeff Sessions, they got him to recuse himself from the Russia hoax. They have manipulated so many things to favor themselves and make it really tough on Republicans. But anyhow, I think when it comes to the current situation, I think the right is unanimous regarding the case and the verdict that took place just last week with the Stormy Daniels case that was brought against Trump. However, the left is, oddly enough, doesn't seem to have that same unification, interestingly enough. There are many that are cheering for the verdict, while others are signaling a slightly different tune, and were singing it even before the verdict. Let's take a look at what some of the leftists were doing or were saying during the first or prior to the verdict actually happened. So let's contrast what again. See, I've always said this. I've always said that when the left and the right disagree, one's lying and one's telling the truth. And when the two align, well, it's more than likely that there's some truth behind it. But when the left in itself disagrees with itself, then you got to really look at, what's going on there. So let's take a look at our very first video.
Despite all the propaganda and all the gaslighting for the last 8 years about how Donald Trump is an obvious criminal and a mafia boss and he's going to prison, everybody knows that these cases, particularly this case, after hearing the imaginary supposed evidence, is weak.
Look, I think that it's very likely this is the only trial that we are going to get before Election Day. And this case is not a slam dunk, which means that Donald Trump may very well not be convicted.
Judge, if I can ask you, do you see any potential appellate issue with the way the DA has charged this case? For the first time in New York history, they've essentially imported a federal campaign finance violation into a state charge.
Norman and I have been talking about this ad nauseum.
Yeah.
Seems like you're talking about everything.
Shockingly.
Even on Sunday.
Well, I want to hear where the judge comes out. I know where Norm comes out. I want to hear where you come out.
Well, it still is. Overall, I give the DA very high marks, absent 6 book excerpts on their summation. But it's still a little tricky to figure out how I think as far as the falsified business records, right, I think it's almost slam dunk right now that they've got Trump pretty solid. I think that the summation for the DA buttoned up a lot of that. Mm-hmm. But connecting that now, what are we connecting it to? How are we now? There is a ton of evidence, of testimony that this was all being done for the campaign. It's being covered up. It was covered up the way it was covered up because it was an unreported campaign contribution. But how has that been imputed to Trump yet?
Right.
And what is the actual? I still have not seen the final charges to the jury. I'm going to be, as a real nerd on this guy, I'm going to be like zoning right in. I want to see where they're using willful, what they're going to be using for state of mind. And whatever they use, I think that this is definitely a potential.
But Judge, to Ellie's point.
What Michael's getting at is the burden of proof is an important one to remind everyone. It's on the prosecution, right? They need to prove beyond reasonable doubt that Donald Trump broke the law. And you think, after listening to all of this, you think they fell short. How?
They fell way short because let's start with reasonable doubt. What is reasonable doubt? And it's not simply a doubt based upon reason. Anytime a human being needs to make an important decision in life, if you have enough information, for example, doctor says you need open heart surgery. Doc, go ahead and schedule. I don't have a reasonable doubt. Conversely, if I say, I appreciate it, but I need a second opinion, I need more information, that is having a reasonable doubt. There is reasonable doubt all over this case. Where is Keith Schiller? Where is Alan Weisselberg? How did Michael Cohen get away with stealing $30,000? Hold a pity party for him. Made $4 million on this. Thought he'd be chief of staff. He's a fixer. If the plumber comes to my house to fix my leak, I could be home. That doesn't mean I know how he's doing it and what it's taking to be fixed. Stormy Daniels, let's hold a pity party for her. Why do we need to know whether or not the former president wore a condom or not? It's simply about, did the former president know that books, his records, false entries for legal fees, Michael Cohen was his lawyer. Did he intend to cover up the election or to protect his family? It's everywhere.
When Randy gets to whisper tones, I start getting concerned.
So that's what a number of panelists, segments from leftist news station were sounding like. Again, not all of them were sounding like that, but there were a few. Again, you would think that they would all be in unison regarding this particular matter, especially with their hate Trump and their TDS syndrome, right? Their Trump derangement syndrome, where they would all be, unanimous in that. Maybe some of them just didn't want to lose credibility. Maybe they were kind of towing the line just in case things didn't go the way that they were, crossing their fingers. Who knows? These people are so devious that honestly, I think we're all just like 3 steps behind them, to be honest with you. So that's what it sounded like before the verdict. But Now, when I look at the flip side and I look at what they were saying after the verdict, again, I'm a little bit puzzled that these people would even say this on these particular news stations and pretend like they're actually being journalists. Maybe it's one of those rare moments. I don't know. Maybe it's a unicorn. But let's take a listen to what they're saying after the verdict.
Fantastic point. When this indictment came out in April of 23, I have a running list of left-leaning legal commentators who dismissed this out of hand. Because to your point, the other 3 cases were in the pot. Now they're not. They're pushed after the election date. New York Times did an analysis. Never before in the history of state New York election law has it been brought against a federal campaign. First time, so novel legal theory. Now all of a sudden you have what I would say intellectually dishonest commentators reversing their point of view because they want what I think the Biden campaign wants, is that convicted felon label.
Even CNN's top legal analyst calls the verdict obscure and unprecedented. In the New York Mag, he writes this: the charges against Trump aren't just unusual, they're bespoke, seemingly crafted individually for the former president and nobody else. It's better characterized as the Frankenstein case, cobbled together with ill-fitting parts into an ugly, awkward, but more or less functioning contraption that just might ultimately turn on its creator.
So there you have it. There are, I mean, it's quite puzzling, but I don't think I wasn't in the court, but based on the things that I've heard that from people that were actually there, and people who are level-headed, they're just this shouldn't, number one, this shouldn't have gone there, and the fact that the way that it came out was not surprising based on how everything was manipulated and presented and so on and so forth. So, and that's what my next section is regarding, right? You have a lot of constitutional scholars on both sides of the aisle that see the abuse and the violations, specifically when it comes to the Sixth Amendment, Trump's Sixth Amendment, right? Here's what a Democrat, Alan Dershowitz, said on Fox on Maria Bartiromo's show just a couple of days ago. Let's check out what he says. He's very, very good lawyer, very much into the Constitution. You could see that because I'll share with you after we play the video. But check this out.
Joining me now is Harvard Law Professor Emeritus. He is author of Get Trump, The Threat to Civil Liberties, Due Process, and Our Constitutional Rule of Law. Spot on. Even before all of this happened, there's the book. Alan Dershowitz is here. Alan, thanks very much for joining me this morning. You've seen this trial unfold firsthand. You had a front row seat in that trial. Your reaction to the verdict?
My big disappointment is with the jury. You know, juries are supposed to be a check and balance on the excesses of prosecutors and judges. This jury failed its role of checking and balance these excesses. Of course they did, because they were handpicked by the judge and by the prosecutor to be anti-Trump. These were Get Trump jurors. These were jurors who voted between 85 and 90% not to allow Trump to be president, and they will do anything to prevent him from being president. And so their vote was a second vote on November against him being president. It wasn't a vote on the facts or the law of the case. The facts of the law of the case here are an absolute joke. There isn't a serious lawyer in the country, Democrat or Republican, who will privately tell you this was a legitimate case. I'm getting calls from friends of mine who are Democrats and who are liberals, but who won't speak out, who say, of course this is outrageous. Of course this is a political trial. Of course there was no basis for convicting him of a misdemeanor based on the statute of limitations. But we're thrilled, we're happy, we're cheering for the result, because this is part of the whole Get Trump mentality. And, maybe it'll backfire, maybe it won't. Maybe it will be reversed on appeal. My worry is that the appellate judges are just like the jurors. They're afraid of coming back home and being accused of being the ones who allowed Trump to become president. I'm afraid the appellate judges will fall into the same Get Trump trap, and we'll see no challenge on our system of rule of law.
So keep in mind, guys, Alan Dershowitz, again, is a Democrat. If I'm not mistaken, he has not voted for Trump a single time, and I don't think he was planning on voting for Trump. He did represent Trump he was one of the lawyers that represented him during one of the hoaxes. I can't remember if it was the first one or the second one where they tried to impeach. I think it was the first one where they didn't impeach him. And so Alan Dershowitz is not a Trump supporter. However, he is a supporter of the Constitution, and that's why I consider him a very, very balanced person. Well, when it comes to this particular matter. Now, something that I picked up in that video, I don't know if you guys noticed, but he's got a lot of Democratic friends and liberal friends that were calling him that could clearly see the abuse, but they couldn't speak out because they just wanted to get Trump, right? Imagine that you hate somebody so much that you're willing to tarnish and dismantle, our Constitution, our judicial system, because of your hatred over a person. That just, wow, it just boggles my mind. I mean, it's just absolutely crazy. In addition to that, some of them might be afraid to come out because the minute you come out, if you're on that side of the aisle, if you come out in support for Trump, guess what? You're getting canceled. Alan Dershowitz was a regular guest on both Fox and CNN, and maybe MSNBC, but I would often see him on CNN. And since he represented Trump, they canceled him. He's no longer going on there. So he's pretty much stuck on Fox, or I don't know if he does any other ones. He's got his own podcast that he has, or his own YouTube channel. So, it's just one of those crazy things. But again, I do appreciate his professional opinion, his professional advice, his professional outlook, right? Because we need that. We need that. If they were all in unison, it would be pretty hard to debate certain things. But because we have reasonable voices that are coming from the left, it doesn't make this a slam dunk case. So what happens now after the verdict, though, is that Joe Biden took to his social media platform and wrote that no one is above the law. A very famous saying by all sides of the political spectrum, but repeated cynically by Democrats, because they have a long laundry list of Democrats who again barely get investigated, and if they do, they're usually tried in blue states, in blue counties, in blue districts where they have a lot of favorability. Hillary Clinton comes to mind when she deleted, after being subpoenaed, she deleted all those emails. And then at the end of the investigation, James Comey comes out and he says, well, there is no intent, so we're not going to move forward with any prosecution. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Is anybody else allowed to destroy evidence after they're subpoenaed and get away with it? I don't think so, unless you're a Democrat. But let's check this little montage.
And it's reckless. It's dangerous. It's irresponsible for anyone to say this was rigged just because they don't like the verdict.
So you're not allowed to have an unauthorized opinion about the outcome of the 2020 presidential election. Otherwise, you're dangerous and undermining democracy. And those statements need to be censored from social media. And now you're also not allowed to question the legitimacy of this kangaroo court. You must be right, old Joe. I mean, if Hillary Clinton did the same thing and didn't properly classify an alleged campaign expense, surely she would have been arrested and convicted and facing jail time, right? Ha ha ha. Oh, wait, what's this? That's right. The Federal Election Commission only fined Hillary Clinton for doing that exact thing. Remember this? This was after the campaign was caught, surprisingly, trying to cover up their payments into the Steele dossier, the fake news Russia dossier that started the entire Russia witch hunt. Even the Cloud News Network surprisingly reported on it at the time. Federal election regulators fined Hillary Clinton's 2016 presidential campaign and the Democratic National Committee for not properly disclosing the money they spent on controversial opposition research, fake news, the fake dossier, that led to the infamous Trump-Russia dossier. The DNC was fined $105,000 and the Clinton campaign was fined $8,000. Oh, no.
So that's just an example. Let's take a look at what happened recently where Trump had some documents, and as the president, he's able to classify and declassify. So these documents were classified. Again, as the president, he has the ability to declassify them. And there's still a pending trial for this. Thankfully, the judge kind of is seeing something that's making her question some type of irregularities and has suspended it for the moment, has suspended the trial. But then when you look at Joe Biden, he had also documents, and he does not have the authority to declassify anything, as you know, at the time, because he was vice president, and yet nothing happens there. He was deemed too old, essentially, to stand trial, right? You know, if I'm not mistaken, one of the judge said that, you know, the jury might look at him as too old to really, it's too old, so there's really no point. Again, the level of corruption. How can somebody be too old to stand trial for, you know, for a violation? Meanwhile, he's capable enough to still be the leader in chief of the country. That makes absolutely no sense in a normal, sane world. But the insanity of all this is actually multi-layered when you think about it. They've tried to deplete Trump's wealth at the very least. They tried to remove him from the ballot at the best. And as a consolation, they tarnish his reputation by shaming people who are supporting a convicted felon. Right? That's been there for the past couple of days. I keep hearing that convicted felon, convicted felon, convicted felon. They're trying to shame us in order to get him to lose support, right? But it's very, very funny because aren't there statues erected to a certain felon that the left loves to champion that triggered the summer of love? I mean, it could be possible this plan is just like, you know, others that will backfire on the Democrats, right? Since the verdict, I've seen a multitude of social media comments, comment after comment of people who did not support Trump in the past, seeing this movement as the final straw that kind of breaks the camel's back, and they are now full on supporting Trump. So as I'm talking, I'm scrolling through just some of the comments that you can see here where, you know, it's like, I never voted for Trump, but guess what? Now I am. I now see the Democrats for who they are, and so on and so forth. Trump's got my vote, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, hopefully this situation backfires on the Democrats. Now, there may be some who will actually step away, but I think there are going to be many who will not jump on the train. So it might be a wash or a favor on our side. I'm not quite sure. Only time will tell. I think, in my personal opinion, I think that it will favor our side, as many folks who are not really friends or allies of Trump, such as Susan Collins and Mitch McConnell, including Virginia Democratic Senator Joe Manchin, who has changed party affiliation, are now coming on to support Trump. Let's check this video out.
All right, folks, so here's the first story. Breaking: Senator Joe Manchin leaves Democrat Party, registering as an independent. He released this tweet on the morning of May 31st, 2024. My commitment to do everything I can to bring our country together has led me to register as an independent with no party affiliation. In a statement in response, Manchin said, "From my first day in public service in 1982, I've always focused on doing what's best for my state and my country, without regard to party or politics. Throughout my days in elected office, I have always been proud of my commitment to common sense, bipartisanship, and my desire to bring people together. It's who I am. It's who I always will be. I have never seen America through a partisan lens. However, since becoming a United States Senator in 2010, I've seen both the Democrat and Republican parties leave West Virginia and our country behind for partisan extremism while jeopardizing our democracy. Today, our national politics are broken. Neither party is willing to compromise to find common ground. To stay true to myself and remain committed to put our country before party, I have decided to register as an independent with no party affiliation and continue to fight for America's sensible majority." Now, he didn't say it outright, but he's literally talking about partisan extremism and jeopardizing democracy as he's leaving the Democrat Party. So it's not the typical left-wing shtick about preserving democracy from the evil right-wing fascist alt-right mob. No, it seems as though he's referencing party extremism on both sides and a threat to democracy, and then decides to resign on the morning after the Trump verdict. I don't think it's a coincidence. It's a shocking escalation, and obviously it's having a big impact. And in this case, that impact may be Joe Manchin deciding to leave the Democrat Party. I wouldn't blame him. I wouldn't want my brand or political legacy anywhere near what the Democrats are doing.
So, similar to Tulsi Gabbard, who was a Democrat and left to the independent party, Joe Manchin also leaves. He follows suits. I wonder what took this guy so long, because when you look at the policies and you look how he runs, he's definitely not a left wing. He's probably your classic Democrat, right? You're kind of like JFK type Democrat. But my question would be to Mr. Manchin is, what what's the right? What are how are Republicans jeopardizing democracy? Maybe he might point to J6 because that's the narrative, right? That a lot of people like to quote. It's such a false narrative, and we'll touch a little bit on that in this video. But it's just really interesting how the support for Donald Trump is now growing from so many unlikely sources after the verdict, and it's hopefully it leads to a humongous fail on the Democratic side. So as mentioned on our channel numerous times before, which was originated by Tucker Carlson, the left loves to accuse us of what they themselves are doing. Here's a montage of them claiming that MAGA crew would become violent. They did this in a premature attempt to say, see, we told you they are a threat to our democracy. Let's check this out real quick.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Laura Ingraham. This is Ingram Angle from Washington tonight. As always, thank you for joining us. Now, if you're paying attention, any attention, to liberal comments made post-verdict, now you would have noticed that you were hearing not so subtle warnings of a MAGA uprising.
Trump and his MAGA followers are, digging in, trying to tear down the system.
He's perfectly willing to call out the mob, basically, and have them attack all of these people and threaten their safety.
There's going to be violence. There's going to be trouble. This is wrong. There's going to be some problems here, maybe some violence. And this president, former president, should not have done what he did.
I don't think he has a problem with the concept of violence.
Now, why would they all say this? It seems like almost coordinated. After all, they won the battle, at least by convicting Trump. That was their dream. So what's their motive for fanning the flames now? Well, since they can't credibly argue that you're better off than you were 4 years ago, they need more than just lawfare to win in November. And even though the January 6th drumbeat really hasn't moved the polls for Biden, they've nonetheless decided to resurrect the threat to democracy theme.
They're willing to forsake and trash our whole democracy, our whole justice system, if they can just get to power, more power.
Again, accusing us of what they themselves are doing. But none of what they inaccurately predicted would happen happened, right? The very opposite took place. We kept going on with our lives, and we got behind our president, helped him raise over $50 million in just 24 hours. I think he's up to, I think it was 50 million in 48 hours. I think he's up to over 141 million since the verdict. And that was like, by the end of the month. Many on the left will point to, like I said, J6 as an example. But I'll argue the details of the matter as far as like threat to democracy, right? There was a small group of people that did get rambunctious, but it was one building, it was one day, it was one event where they perceived is the center of corruption. Additionally, we can't dismiss the questionable actions of Ray Epps, possible Fed involvement that the feds neither confirm nor deny that they had involvement in. Now, if they didn't have involvement, then it would be a clear, no, we weren't there, we didn't have anything to do with it. But because they were grilled, they were questioned, and they could not answer it, then it leaves up for speculation that, guess what? Yeah, you were there and you shouldn't have been there. And maybe you did have something to do with those people that got rambunctious. Who knows, right? Now, in addition, Democrats jumped on the defense for Mr. Epps, which was interesting. I saw a number of Democrats on video defending them. When have you ever seen Democrats defend an actual Trump supporter? Aren't we all deplorables, white supremacists, extreme nationalists, and clowns according to the left? So why would they defend any one of us? It's a good question. It's a good question. But the left uses these types of examples as a tactic, right? If we react in some way, the left will label us as violent, and we will have another J6 commentary running 24/7. However, the right doesn't react the same way. We kind of have this, passive reaction, this turn the cheek type of thing where we do react differently. We don't burn down cities. We don't cause destruction. We don't have a physical pushback. And so, to be quite honest with you, it's a double-edged sword. That kind of allows the left to do whatever they want because in the end, they know that we're going to turn the cheek. My question is, how far are we going to get pushed? I mean, little by little, the left is becoming more tyrannical. Are we going to wait until we become like Cuba before we actually wake up? I think maybe it'll be a little too late by the time that happens. I don't know. I don't have an answer either. But I've never been more concerned as an America for our future than I've been since, quite honestly, Obama's second term, because I just saw a radical change in the country. Final thoughts. In the end, I hope these Wile E. Coyote type plans the Democrats have continue to fail and Trump continues to gain massive leads in these battleground states. The dictator-like schemes of the Democrats is being noticed by many in the middle and some on the left who are smart enough to see through it. You know, unless you have some type of an extreme case of TDS, Americans want fairness, and we want to make sure that all of our systems that we have in place are fair. The way that Trump has been treated from the beginning of his campaign has been anything but fair. Remember this warning Democratic Senator Chuck Schumer made a few years back regarding the intelligence community. Let's just take a quick refresher on this.
Let me ask you, I don't know if you have seen this. I don't want to blindside you with this. This is the latest statement, latest tweet, as you were just saying. The president-elect's latest unsolicited pronouncement on the intelligence community. This was his tweet just a little while ago tonight. You see the scare quotes there. The intelligence briefing on so-called Russian hacking was delayed until Friday. Perhaps more time needed to build a case. Very strange. We're actually told, intelligence sources tell NBC News since this tweet has been posted, that actually this intelligence briefing for the president-elect was always planned for Friday. It hasn't been delayed. But he's taking these shots, this antagonism, this taunting to the intelligence community.
You take on the intelligence community, they have 6 ways from Sunday at getting back at you. So even for a practical, supposedly hard-nosed businessman, he's being really dumb to do this.
What do you think the intelligence community would do if they were motivated?
I don't know, but from what I am told, they are very upset with how he has treated them and talked about them.
I don't know what to make of that. I don't know if he accidentally said the truth, but wow, you know, and that prompted Trump with the whole drain the swamp and the deep state and so on and so forth. And so when you hear Chuck Schumer saying that and you see everything that's gone on till now, I mean, he's being harassed. He's being harassed. There's no other way to look at it. So when you look at everything these people have done and put this man through, I mean, is it any wonder people are taking notice? Is it any wonder that people are saying the same things that this gentleman is saying?
You can see how some of the deck has been stacked against Donald Trump. The jury, of course, largely or all from Manhattan, 90% of which voted for Joe Biden. We know that too. So the cake is baked on the biases here. The American people, though, fundamentally, they like and want fairness. If they perceive this to be unfair, it's going to blow up in the Democrats' face. And now you have Joe Biden saying he's going to comment on this trial from the White House. Not to mention the fact he went out today and had like a campaign rally with Robert De Niro kind of brushing Trump back and trying to go after Trump. He has made this political, a massive misstep by the Biden campaign and the Biden White House. It reeks of unfairness. The American people reject that in all forms.
Rest assured, though, as I've mentioned in our prior video, as a matter of fact, the Democrats are a deceptive octopus where they have their tentacles in a number of different ways to take this election, and I'd be shocked if this is their primary plan. I think they have more things in line, some of which is already in play and some that is ready to be executed. Just look at the demonic smile Joe Biden gives when questioned about Trump's verdict.
A picture is worth 1,000 words. So what do you think Biden's saying here?
Mr. President, can you tell us, sir, Donald Trump refers to himself as a political prisoner and blames you directly. What's your response to that, sir? Do you think the conviction will have an impact on the campaign? We'd love to hear your thoughts, sir.
That smile was not only telling for me, very troublesome, because we're not supposed to be, a banana republic. We're not supposed to be a third world country. We're not supposed to be, we're not supposed to allow political corruption to undermine all of the systems that we have in play, our Constitution, right? And the point is that if they do this to Donald Trump, they can do it to just about anyone. There are people that are still being held from the J6, even though it's more than likely that that was some type of a setup, that the government was involved. As a matter of fact, my wife, coming from Venezuela, and I've mentioned this several times, there was a guy who was running against Maduro, I think during the second election or something like that. And all of these dirty tactics that the Democrats are doing right now, she saw exactly the same types of tactics play out over there. There was a protest. Maduro had hired some thugs to cause a riot, to cause an issue. They actually put the guy behind bars because they claimed that he was starting an insurrection against the country, and they actually ended up jailing that guy. My wife is astonished that here in our country, in this great country of ours, these types of things are happening just like in her home country of Venezuela. So, guys, I don't mean to be a bearer of bad news, but listen, we definitely have to show up. We definitely have to vote. We definitely got to get our Republican leaders to stop to show some backbone, man. We need to come together as a party, support this president, support this man, and we really got to start playing some offense. We can't just keep going on the defense. We got to tackle these Democrats one way or another. So, guys, thanks so much for joining me. Until the next video, God bless you guys. God bless America. God bless Donald Trump. And, may we win in 2024. Bye-bye.